Okay, so a good place to start would be if you could give me a little bit of background about Centiel, the company, you know, when it was formed, what it's got up to, and I guess obviously its UK presence.
Yeah, of course. So it's interesting, really. So we manufacture in the south of Switzerland. It's about an hour inside the border from Milan. So that region, that sort of northern region of Italy, southern region of Switzerland, seems to be a bit of a hotbed for UPS manufacturing. So we've been sort of sat there for quite a few years. Centiel was founded in about 2015. Okay, so they spent the first few years in R&D and then establishing the brand, and then obviously from there they were setting up a partner network around Europe and globally, and then one of the major milestones was to set up a UK distribution, which was actually us as Centiel UK Limited, is a wholly owned subsidiary from the factory. So we are in essence a manufacturer within the UK. So when I say this company was founded in about 2015, the R&D team, the guys that created Centiel, have got over 30 years experience in developing UPSs, and very specifically modular technology and transformerless technology. So they're very, very well rounded within this particular field. So we know what we're doing, basically. I would say in the past 3 years, when we've been really pushing, particularly in the UK, I think globally we've sold over 200 megawatts of UPS. That's globally, sorry. And in the UK, we're at around about 25 plus megawatts in the same sort of timescales. Just to put a bit of background onto that as well, we talk about a product which is modular within the UPS technology. Now, if I said approximately 80% of the units that we sell is modular, gives you an idea of where the sort of market sits with UPSs, really, and why this is such an important product for us.
Okay, and in terms of yourself, have you been with Centiel since they established their UK presence? What can you give us a little bit of your background?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've been in, obviously this exposes my age a little bit now, but I've been in the industry for about 15 years. I came out of university. I graduated as a design engineer, always thinking about going into some sort of heavy engineering role. I knew nothing about UPSs, nothing about the industry, power continuity. I just saw this opportunity pop up, and it was a selling role, but it was like a design solution selling role. And I thought, you know what, I sort of fancy that. So I went in as a real junior, you know, an internal sales engineer, coming up with concepts, pushing product, again, a Swiss product from the same R&D team. And I guess I just developed from there. I went external on the road, and I was selling and directly influencing with consultants and end users and contractors. And I've sort of been there ever since, really progressing my career. I knew Centiel was doing something in the background. And when they launched in the UK, which was over 3 years ago now, so we're in our 4th year of Centiel in the UK only. Yeah, I snapped at the chance to be part of that, really. I'm now sort of progressing my career further. I'm the sales and marketing director at Centiel UK. I'm bringing the next talent on board into the UPS industry, and it's not something that's quite unique to us. It's not about a hard sell, just selling a product. It's about selling the solution, but the right solution to the customer. It's the importance of that correct solution to the customer, and that's what I'm trying to teach the next generation, really.
Yeah, just on that point, if I'm right, I saw that you've recently appointed a chap called Graham Murray to expand your sales team. Is that right? Can you give us just an idea of what your sales sort of operation consists of?
Yeah, sure. So Graham comes from the industry as well. He is very well familiar with this type of technology that we sell and produce. I've got several sales guys in the hardware side of the business at the moment who are sort of I don't want to use the terminology young, but very young and ambitious and willing to learn, and they want to go down the route of a solution sell. So 50% of our business, I would say, is a very hardware orientated part of the business. So, you know, we establish that, we get the solution, we put it onto the street, and then the other 50% of the business, which is key, is the service side of the business, which is made up with a whole another team altogether.
And I guess it would be good then to move on to the actual sort of UPS technology itself. So clearly, as you alluded to earlier, whether it's in, was it South Switzerland, there's lots of UPS clearly there's quite a lot of UPS manufacturers out there. So what is it that distinguishes yourselves, whether it's technology and sort of sales and support, or a mix? You know, can you give us some sort of idea of what you think are the key differentiators?
Yeah, well, you know, 15 years ago when I came into the industry, you know, we were producing this modular technology, this transformer-less technology. It was all about, you know, the footprint, the efficiency, and I guess now we've taken that to another level. But for us, we have a very good product. We're very lucky, for where we manufacture, having the Swiss stamp of, you know, quality, the quality of the product itself, and its performance and its architecture. So it comes down to Centiel at the moment, this agility. We're in a position where we have the agility to be scalable, flexible, you know, and adaptable to sort of any scenario, really. But that isn't just the product, it has to be the company and how the company behaves, whether that's turning a production line to suit a large scale project, whether that's a decision in-house. We need to be able to move and adapt quite quickly, professionally. Lucky for us, we are made from some of the best knowledge within the industry that work for Centiel. You know, that's from the factory, that's in the UK. So we were able to make these decisions very quickly. We're able to stand by our design and our thought process and support people and be confident to support people in doing that, really. When I said like 15 years ago, you know, we were still developing like the second and third generation of this particular technology. You know, it was a wow factor then, but we still seem to still have this wow factor now. You know, the fundamentals of modular technology are there. You know, we've got this replication of components, the availability, which is what it's all about, the high resilience levels, and it's all about reducing the mean time to repair, basically. And then that leads us into this buzzword in the industry of hot swap, which isn't just about UPSs. It can be everything from like switching a hard disk out or whatever within like IT. But we've then taken that further into something called like safe hot swap.
Okay, can you give us a bit more, as you say, people probably in the IT industry are familiar with the idea of hot swap, which if I understand it correctly, is you can basically take something out of a system without that system stopping. I know that's a very crude way of describing it. So how does this work in the UPS environment?
No, I feel you're absolutely right with that terminology. There's no easy way to put it. It's being able to replace components or parts while the power is still connected and the load is still running. So this is absolutely fundamental to the technology that we manufacture. So if you take, for example, let's say a legacy system. In the old days, you would have what we call a standalone or monolithic block of UPS or electronics. In order to maintain that unit, you might have to, I don't know, put it into some sort of bypass state where the UPS is actually in an offline situation and the load is not protected anymore. And that has to be done for, you know, X amount of time, hours, maybe even sometimes days, depending on, you know, the issues surrounding that equipment. With our technology, with modular, we are able to completely maintain, swap, change components within the system without going to bypass, without putting the load at risk. Again, it goes back to that whole, you know, the power is connected and the load is protected. One step further, we've taken this. Modular is called modular and true modular because of this replication of every component. We effectively stack UPS modules vertically within a rack. We go vertically first, and then we go horizontally. Okay, and when we talk about modular, we are replicating each component inside that module. So we've got, the rectifier, inverter, static switch, CPU system. So you can effectively be able to unplug that entire module. Effectively, you can cable it up and power it as a UPS in its own right. Now, because of that architecture and that replication of components, that means we can take things in and out of the frame completely hot without having to switch the load. We as a company have taken that one step further, where we want to be able to not just take modules out of the frame and put them back in the frame and potentially put an inherent fault back into the system and onto the load. We have a system that enables us to fully test, so isolate, test a module before injecting it back into the system with the remaining modules, and avoiding the risk of putting a fault into the system and affecting the load. So that's where we take hot swap, and then we call it safe hot swap. So we've sort of increased the resilience, we've increased the availability, and we've lowered the mean time to repair. And it's all about, this availability and zero downtime.
Yeah, and I guess to that point as well, the sort of service side of the business is quite important, because you hear stories that, people are waiting for components or whatever to come from, long distances, etc. So how do you sort of characterize your service offering, and how important do you see it, I guess, in terms of supporting your customer base?
Yes, service is hugely important. You're purchasing a product that you're going to live with for the next 10 to 15 years, possibly more, in which case you're going to need to also partner yourself with a firm that can support you in that time. The UPS is a valuable asset. It's valuable in its physical cost, its capex cost, but it's also, its main value is because it's looking after what is classed as a critical load, whether that's someone's life or its IT. It's almost your sort of insurance policy. And the fundamentals of a maintenance contract, or a maintenance plan, is you're going to have your preventative maintenance visits, 24/7, 365, technical support any hour of the day. Your response time for your engineer to attend site and engage within a fault or a call out. Firmware updates, constant firmware updates to make sure the electronics on board is and the brain of the UPS is behaving adequately. And then, as you've said, your access to spare parts. With modular, this is also a fundamental benefit to going down a modular route. There's no need for keeping crash kits nearby or on site or at your depot. We have access to a range, and in stock, a range of service modules or new modules that are quickly shipped to site, and within seconds you can remove a module, put a service module in place, and take the issue away from site. So the days have sort of gone really with fixing UPSs at component level on site. It still happens, but we're sort of going away from that now. It's a little bit like plugging your laptop into your BMW, I guess. That sort of opening the bonnet thing sort of disappeared. But I think the absolute key here is this preventative word. It's not just about maintenance, it's about preventing any issue happening to that load. And you've got to be checking everything. You've got to be checking the age of your components, capacitors, fans, batteries, the environment that the UPS is sat in. You get fluctuations in temperatures, it's going to make some sort of effect on not just the components, but the battery bank that's attached to the UPS. And also this field service report that you get from a preventative maintenance visit is really key. It's not just key for us to be able to advise a customer. It's key for the customer to plan what happens to them next. It gives them an idea of maybe they're going to have to spend some money on some remedials or a product lifecycle replacement, and they can plan for that. Those recommendations, they can plan to budget for those works if need to happen, or make changes to their site, or analyze the balance of their load, or whatever. It's really valuable information for them.
And maybe just looking a little further ahead to start with, at least still focusing on UPS, what sort of things, whether it's the industry generally or yourselves, Centiel as a company, I mean, automation seems to be a driving force right across the industry. Intelligence, how you describe it, I'm wondering. And you mentioned the sort of the battery scenario. Lithium ion is I won't say creeping in. It maybe is coming in at a fairly and then we get into all these sort of renewables debates. The hydrogen fuel cells is another. Just can you give us any sort of thoughts that you or the company has in terms of how UPSs might develop over the next couple of years?
Yeah, I think the UPS technology has always been about getting the maximum amount of power in the smallest footprint and the strive for efficiency. I think when it comes to changes within physical UPSs, it's the gaps used to climb this much, and now they're sort of you're only climbing small amounts. I think it comes down to more about how people are thinking about utilizing UPSs. For years we were seeing hugely oversized systems within data centers, maybe throughout the industry, to be honest, where you would size everything at day one for day two. It became quite costly. You've got systems running inefficiently for the decade or for 15 years. So I think it's about that they were past, but now with this scalable approach, this pay-as-you-grow approach, you can develop your system to only pay for what you want now, but giving you the ability to scale up later on. So you're not throwing all your capital expenditure in one go. And those systems never really get to where they're fully designed for anyway. So I think first of all, I think it's about that. I think it's about the approach in which we're helping people understand how they utilize their UPS. The other thing we're seeing is when it comes to like data center design and incorporating UPSs is we've seen a shift in this tiered ready data center stuff. So whereas before people would design a data center, put in their power infrastructure into that, and then go and seek a tier classification or certification for it. We've been working alongside a lot of data center design and builders who now already have a tier ready off-the-shelf data center. So all your that your design obviously gets the stamp of approval, but also your shopping list is already built into that. So our UPS is already specified into that design. So if your client buying that off the shelf, you know exactly what you're going to get. You know the shopping list. So it saves time, it saves cost. It does exactly what it says on the tin, and it stops budgets being blown. How many times do we see a budget being blown on a job, and then it goes out to what we call value engineering stage, which isn't really value engineering, it's just cutting costs, and it sort of stops that sort of behavior really. So I think again it's not so much. I mean, we're already working on our next generation of UPS, which is well, I can't say when it's planned for, but it's coming. But the development in the actual UPS technology is getting smaller, but the way people are using the technology is getting better. It's changing.
And in terms of the data center industry, sort of more generally, I guess sustainability is a pretty big deal. We've got COP26 coming up in the autumn, and net zero is thrown around all the time. Do you see that as the main data center challenge, or there are other things to add to that sort of picture?
Yeah, I think this goes back to this whole like scalability, flexibility, and adaptable approach. When it comes to challenges, it's always going to be about cost, isn't it? That's what data centers always do. So we can get them to implement a system that gives them the flexibility to only actually use what they need now, to give them the ability to plan for the future, always keeping the eye on day two, but only doing what you need for day one. For example, we could put in a megawatt of UPS infrastructure, but we actually only need to employ the amount of modules that they may use on day one, for example, 200 kilowatts. Now, if they start selling space or the load starts to grow, you can offset the amount of UPS that you're using against that cost. But that system may never get to 1 megawatts. So you haven't actually spent the money to, you know, to accommodate the 1 megawatt. You know, you're not wasting not only that capital expenditure, but the operational cost of burning that energy that was never to be used. Data centers are also under a lot of strain to attract customers, I guess. So, you know, what's important for them is their resilience, their availability, and their security. You know, when you take an example of resilience with modular, you can increase the resilience very easily by just adding an additional module to create your N+1, or, you know, going up from a tier 3 to a tier 4, let's say, by just adding in additional modules to get to a 2N+1, rather than adding in loads of additional infrastructure. So I think with the Centiel solution, I think we're able to, but only obviously with the UPS section, is to sort of alleviate some of those challenges and help them with their sustainability and help them with their capital and operational expenditure. You know, it's just about thinking differently.
And I'm wondering, one of the other trends that everyone's talking about, the edge, and everyone's definition of the edge is probably slightly different from everybody else's, but fundamentally it seems like micro data centers, we'll call them that, are beginning to become quite prevalent. Does that have any sort of impact on you guys as manufacturers, or you just, you know, deliver a slightly smaller UPS than you would into a large? Is that simple?
Yeah, it's not necessarily one size fits all. You know, it's not like you have this amount of power, let's just put all that in. We have loads of different size frames and loads of different size modules. So we can pretty much fit any bill. Now, I have seen a big shift there where everyone was all of a sudden shoving everything out to large data centers into greenfields. And now everyone's slowly coming back in. I think the size of data that people were thinking they, you know, utilizing was a lot bigger than it actually is. So it's actually probably more cost effective to bring that in-house into a smaller solution. We have the perfect UPS that can create the availability and the resilience in a very, very small footprint for the actual requirement of that data, these edge data centers that are being utilized more and more. So yeah, we can create a resilient modular solution at this size, or we can create it at, you know, 6-7 megawatts. It's completely scalable to that.
Okay, maybe just as we finish, you alluded to the fact that there's going to be another you know, generation of UPS on the way. I understand you can't probably tell us exactly when, but can you give us some hints or ideas, you know, what we can expect from Centiel over the next, you know, year or so, in terms of whether it's developing the technology or, you know, the infrastructure that supports it?
Yeah, so it's quite interesting. I mean, we 2.5 years ago quadrupled our manufacturing plant in Switzerland because of the success of the product. We are working on things. Obviously I need to be very careful. The expectation is that we will see something between Q3 and Q4 this year. However, that may just push over into 2022. It's all about understanding the demand of the industry. You know, whether we have to, we're not necessarily trying to make the biggest and baddest UPS. We're trying to understand what the market actually requires. So that could be everything from fine-tuning the footprint to making the systems more available, you know, by, you know, putting in better resilience with multiple components inside the modules, or yeah, I feel I'm really sorry I can't say too much on that.
No, that's right.
I wouldn't want to give the game away.
No, I don't want to catch you out. And maybe just finally then, for folks watching this and, you know, looking at their existing UPS and looking maybe at upgrading, replacing, one or two bits of advice as to what to look for, you know, when they're comparing different solutions, and obviously the companies behind them, a couple of pieces of advice, you know, questions they need to ask, what they need to look for. Yeah,
so you are buying an expensive piece of equipment to look after an extremely valuable load. You're also going to live with that product for 10 to 15 years, potentially even more. It's very important not just to consider the product, but to consider who you are working with. Us being a manufacturer, you do have direct access to spare parts, spare modules, firmware upgrades, advice, technical information and knowledge. We want to have that relationship with our client for that amount of time and do the right thing. We have an invested interest in our own equipment to understand what we can do, adapt and change if we need to, and help that client out. So it's not just about a shiny box. It's about what's inside that shiny box, and it's about how you support that shiny box going forward. So it's really important that your client chooses not just the product, but who they want to work with and how they're going to be supported.
Okay, that's brilliant. I've really enjoyed chatting to you. So thanks very much indeed for your time. Thank you.
Welcome. Thanks, Phil.